Hello students, here we go. We're on the digestive system. I think I had assumed this had come earlier, so sorry about referring to it before. But we're going to be looking at the digestive system today for Module 13. All right, so we'll be looking at the system and how we digest food, and then we'll have a little mini unit on nutrition. So here we go. The digestive system is known as the alimentary canal, all right, or the GI tract. GI stands for gastrointestinal, okay? So nutrients get absorbed into the bloodstream from the food that we eat. It must be broken down physically and chemically by the gastrointestinal tract. So digestion actually means the breaking apart. The absorption is the part where we get the nutrients delivered to our bodies. So the picture over here, we can see what we're looking at. We see, we're going to start actually with the teeth up there, then the throat, right tongue, saliva, throat, esophagus into the stomach, into the small and then large intestines. And then we see other things here, the liver, the pancreas, and the gallbladder. We're going to talk about each one of those and their the way they participate in the digestive, the act of digestion. So here we go. Digestion, the official definition of digestion is the breakdown of food into components, okay? So it's breaking the food down, it's making it smaller so it will be available for absorption. So you might want to think of the digestive tract as being the process of digestion and then absorption of nutrients, okay? All right, so let's start with, it says up at the top, I don't know if you can see that very well, digestion is the chemical breakdown into individual components. So we'll be looking at physical and chemical, and we're clearly starting here with the mouth. That's where we begin to eat our food. All right, the fancy word for chewing is called mastication, to masticate the food. That means to break it down. That's the beginning of the breakdown of the digestion, right? Because we're physically breaking it down by crunching it with our teeth, chemically breaking it down by some of the chemicals that are in our saliva. So it all starts in the mouth. Lips, teeth, tongue, and jaw muscles start the physical breakdown, and then chemicals in our saliva, including, ready, amylase, lysosome. They mix with mucus and antibodies to dissolve food, allowing for taste. So we know a little bit about the mucus and antibodies from our last module. Isn't that correct? Right? So remember, if anything's coming into our body from the outside, we need to have some method to keep it from getting us sick, right? So we have those antibodies right there to take care of anything that might come in through our mouth in the realm of like the viral things. But amylase and lysosome are chemicals that actually break down certain things, right? Remember, lyso means to break up, to explode, to, so we're doing that chemically. So we're breaking down physically and chemically. All right, so let's look at, this is a side view right here. So we have our mouth, our pharynx, and our esophagus. Okay, so the mouth, the teeth here, the tongue. We have salivary glands. We'll get to that here in just a minute. We have the muscles of our jaw that allow for the chewing process. And then we can see here the oropharynx, the epiglottis is important, the laryngopharynx, and then the esophagus. Now look what's in front, okay? So right in front of the esophagus is the larynx and the trachea. All right, so the larynx and the trachea are part of the respiratory system. That's where the air is going to go. And it's important for us that when we're eating our food, that the food doesn't go down this, what we call the wrong pipe, right? We cough when that happens. We do have this really fancy little thing right here called the epiglottis. As soon as I'm going to swallow something, the epiglottis will flap forward over the windpipe, okay, the trachea. And the esophagus right here, it stays flat most of the time unless food's going through it. Sometimes you might have noticed if you have a burp or a belch, right, it kind of makes a flappy sound. That's because it's flapping through your esophagus, the gas coming back from your stomach area. All right, let's look at a little more closely at our teeth. We have 32 teeth at when you're an adult. Okay, this is if you have them all. I believe that actually does include the wisdom teeth, okay? So there's a good chance if you were in high school that you don't have 32. You probably had some removed, either some wisdom teeth removed, or if you had braces, you may have had others. I personally had all 4 wisdom teeth and then 4 more teeth removed for braces. They kind of do things a little differently nowadays. They try to make your mouth bigger to accommodate all your teeth so that you'll get them all, right? All right, so let's look at the different kinds. We have our incisors. So those are these ones right here in the front. 1, 2, 3, 4 up here, and 1, 2, 3, 4 down here, right? The big pretty ones. and those are for tearing. For cutting. Canines are for tearing. Those are the pointy ones, the vampire ones, right? That's for tearing. Think about tearing, say, beef jerky or something along those. And then molars in the back are flat. That's for crushing. So if you looked at the teeth of a human, then you would have the impression that humans eat both meat and vegetables, because we have the meat-eating teeth, the tearing and the cutting, and then we have the vegetable crunching, the crushing, the molars in the back, okay? So we are what we call omnivores. We eat both. Our teeth are held firmly in place by our shock-absorbent gums, and then they have their hard bone, and then there's a cribriform palate right above here that also is bone. But really, your gums are holding your teeth in very, very strongly. Once your adult teeth are in, your teeth should never get loose. All right, so unless you're a hockey player, right, who gets their teeth knocked out by a stick. Go USA team. All right. Let's see. Our salivary glands are also part of the process. That would be the chemical part, right? So let's take a look. There are 3 major salivary glands arranged in pairs. We have the parotid glands. Let's see what our picture looks like. Here we go. The parotid glands back here. I'm going to talk about that in just a minute. The sublingual means below the tongue, and submandibular below the jaw. Okay? They release saliva below the tongue. We produce about 1 liter of saliva daily. Wow, that's a lot. Saliva is controlled by our autonomic nervous system. I want to talk real quick about the parotid gland right here. If you've ever tasted something really sour and it sort of hurts right below your ear, it's because the parotid gland is actually squirting out a whole bunch of saliva to help you digest that, like a lemon or something like that. If you've ever been blowing up a balloon and it kind of hurts right there, that's because you sort of kind of put a little pressure on that parotid gland right there. Okay. Some people have talents where they can actually lift their tongue up and squirt saliva right from their sublingual gland. I cannot do that. All right, now the process of swallowing is called deglutition. I don't know if this is okay, we have a video in here in just a second. Deglutition. Okay, so deglutition. The tongue is a very strong muscle. It churns the food. So we move the food around in our mouth with our tongue, and then it turns it into something called a bolus. And then we swallow that. And we have powerful muscular action, which has it going down into our stomach. Okay, there are 3 stages of swallowing. You may not have thought of this. The voluntary stage, it's pretty much still in your mouth at this point, and you can still spit the food out, right? So if somebody tells you, hey, that's poison, then you can spit it out real quick. Well, then comes the pharyngeal stage, where the soft palate rises up. It closes off the nasal cavity because we don't want anything going up your nose, although you may have had that experience in the past. And then the epiglottis will then seal off the airway. Okay, so that's happening right then. It's kind of a quick stage. And then comes the esophageal stage. When the bolus enters the esophagus, it's pushed by the strong muscular action called peristalsis. Okay, that's a very important word, peristalsis. It's right here. Write that one down. That's going to be on a quiz or a test, I promise. It moves it down to the stomach, okay, by action of the autonomic nervous system and strong, smooth, and skeletal muscle action. I believe at this place, right at stage 2 and 3, you can't spit it out anymore. Okay, you're committed to the swallow at that point. And then even if you're standing on your head, the muscle movement will take the food down into your stomach, even against gravity. You know, astronauts up in space, they have no trouble swallowing their food because it's not about gravity. Although you may think in some cases gravity might help you in this, it is really about that strong muscular movement, that strong peristaltic action right here. We're going to see that word more and more because we are using that type of muscular movement throughout the digestive system. All right. Oh, I put this in here. We're going to have the swallowing thing in just a minute. I am fascinated with the speech therapist vocation. All right, so we're looking here at a speech therapist and a man she's talking to. Now, notice he's elderly. It's possible that he's gone through something like a stroke or something like this. So when there is damage to the brain through stroke or other things, even sometimes old age, we can have a problem swallowing. It's difficult. I don't know if you've ever known like your grandparents or great-grandparents or something who have had to be kind of basically taught how to swallow again. You can imagine how not being able to swallow would be a problem, correct? Yes, so it's interesting that it's a speech therapist that teaches that. And the reason why that is the case is because think about it. What is a speech therapist dealing with? They're dealing with your lips and your tongue and your jaw, all the muscles of your jaw, all those same kind of muscles that are used for swallowing. And so they can go through some certain exercises. My mom was going through this at one point, and we had a speech therapist, and she was just fabulous, and she had all the knowledge that was needed for all these various things besides just actual speech. Because sometimes, people who've gone through a stroke do lose their ability to speak. And so a speech therapist can help them to remember how to use the muscles of their mouth, again, how to push the air out. That would be part of, obviously, speech is part of the respiratory system. But they are very helpful when it comes to learning how to swallow again. So I don't know if that's a field that you might want to look into. It's just absolutely fascinating. These people are some of the most wonderful people in the medical field. Okay, so let's get to our swallowing here. We're going to see that our medulla oblongata and the lower pons, that's the part of the brain, that's in the brainstem area. So we can have swallowing. And that means if somebody has some serious brain damage up in the big part of the brain, in the cerebellum and cerebrum, they can still swallow. That's how important it is, okay? So the swallowing center, and then vomiting, if you think about it, that takes a lot of muscular movement to send something up out of your stomach and get rid of it. It's an important process that we must have in case we are sick and need to get something out of our body. Typically what vomiting is to get the food, whatever you swallowed, to get out of your body because it's not making you better, right? It's making you worse. Whether it's some sort of, you've taken something to make you throw up because you've swallowed something bad, or if you're sick and your body just doesn't want to spend time in the digestive system, it wants to spend time on the immune system at that point, just get rid of some of that stuff, right? Okay, so you can see our oral stage is, I believe this red thing is, it's the bolus, right? So we're chewing it. Here's the voluntary stage right here, just before we're gonna gulp right there. We can still spit out, right? This white part right here is your tongue, by the way. So the red's the bolus. So we can see the air, I like the way they show the epiglottis here in this picture better, because you can see how it's gonna flap closed right here. So therefore the esophagus, which is this flat thing right here, the food will go right down. There's the closed epiglottis. You see it's right there, and it's going to go down in that tube right in there, okay? The OES means esophagus. That's the old-fashioned way of spelling esophagus with the O in the front, okay? Most people don't use the O in the front anymore. Okay, we're going to watch a little video. This is kind of fun because this is what a speech therapist would do. They're going to have this person swallow something. If you listen closely, you can hear the instructions. See, he's chewing. Something you can see with the x-ray. Watch it go down, right there. Okay, you saw it kind of coming through here. Yeah, right there. They're going to do, I think, a liquid now. Yeah. You see the epiglottis here. It's pretty cool, isn't it? They're going to do it from the front here in just a second. This is going to help them to see if there's damage. See how it is kind of going to the side a little bit. I wonder if that's an issue. I don't know. They're following it down to the stomach.
And back up. Okay, video off. Recording.
There's the heart and the lungs.
And back up. Up, up, up. Video off.
Here goes the liquid. I don't know. I noticed a deviation right there.
Recording. Swallow.
From the side again.
Okay, and forward. Look forward. Swallow again. Okay, video off. Recording.
Okay, pretty cool, yeah? And that way that they can sort of kind of monitor the flow going down through the esophagus. Okay, so the esophagus. Let's get to the details of this. It's a long, flat, muscular tube that connects the mouth to the stomach. Remember, it's flat unless there's something in it, right? The upper esophageal sphincter, notice it's UES, upper esophageal, but it might be OES in some of them, UOES. It's just beneath the pharynx, not to be confused with the larynx, okay? So the larynx is for the respiratory system. The pharynx is just the back of the throat, right there, okay? Then we have the lower esophageal sphincter, right? That's going to go all the way down to the stomach. That's a little muscle that's kind of closing that off. That keeps stuff from coming up from the stomach, okay? Known as also the cardiac sphincter because it's right in the area just below where the heart is. In fact, this is where heartburn takes place. That's why we call it heartburn, because the cardiac sphincter is kind of close to the area where the heart is. So it's just really food washing back up from the stomach, and it burns a little bit on the esophageal tissue right there, the epithelial tissue of that. But it is closed off, so it's closed here until you put something through it. It's closed here till something comes through it. All right. So here it is, peristalsis. I told you we're going to come back to this time and time again. The process of contraction and relaxation of the circular muscles found in that area, and they push the food through the alimentary canal. Usually when I do a lab, what I will do, especially for younger students, is we'll take a long balloon and we'll push with our fingers all the way through, like a large bean or something like that. We'll push it down through, and our finger movement is kind of showing how peristalsis works. All right, so it contracts and pushes it. It contracts and pushes it, contracts and pushes it. Pretty cool. All right, here you can see it. It's going to contract above it, squeeze it down, squeeze it down. Remember, even if you're standing on your head, it'll squeeze that bolus down. Okay, remember what it's called? Peristalsis. All right, then when we get our food through the esophagus into here's the cardiac sphincter right here, and here's the stomach. Now notice the shape of it. It's a very specific shape. Any kind of mammal that you might end up dissecting, whether it's a little piggy or a rat, which is really good, any other one. In fact, other creatures even. I'm thinking like a frog even has a stomach shape like this. They all have that sort of same shape of the stomach. Now I want you to notice all of the tissue. Look at that. These are called tunics, right? And there's so many of them. The inside, and notice the muscles going this way, the muscles going that way, the muscles going this way, and it's kind of going under here like this too, up here. All that different direction of the muscle is giving extra strength, so when that stomach needs to contract when it has food in it, or even sometimes when it doesn't have food in it, it'll squish things around and you'll hear like a growling sound, right? So that's when our stomach growls. It means there's no food in there. Notice the sphincters at the end of the stomach right here, the pyloric sphincter, and this area of the stomach is called the pylorus. And then the cardiac sphincter, it says here, when it fails here and some of the juices from the stomach wash back up in here, we're going to see in just a minute that the juices in the stomach are quite acidic, and therefore that acid can literally burn the tissue, and that's what causes heartburn. So what's going to happen in here? The bolus enters into the stomach. We have chemicals in there. We have a lot of muscular movement in there. And it's going to turn the bolus into something we call chyme. C-H-Y-M-E, chyme. All right, let's see our steps right here. What's the function of the stomach, first of all? The functions are, one, to secrete hydrochloric acid. That's HCl. That has a pH of about 1.5. Wow, that's very acidic. If you were to take that pure HCl from your stomach and drop it onto the skin on your arm or something, it would burn it. That's how strong that acid is in there. So how in the world does the stomach keep from burning? Well, we'll get to that in just a minute. Another job of the stomach is for storage. It literally holds the food in there for a little while. It kind of makes things slow down so that the intestine, which is coming here, the small intestine, it gives it time to prepare for the food to come in an orderly manner. So the food will be stored in there for a while. Think about after Thanksgiving dinner, right? And your stomach just feels full. That's because it's going to slow down and start to just move it around and then squeeze it just kind of a little bit at a time into the small intestine. All right, and churning the bolus into chyme, adding pepsin. Pepsin is a chemical that is going to break down proteins, okay? A lot of times when we talk about the stomach, we use the word pepper, peppermint. Those are all things that have Pepsi, Cola. Those are things that are supposed to help with your digestion. because of pepsin, okay, because it refers to the stomach. There's weak peristalsis. In other words, it's moving food from here downward. Okay, it's moving it around to turn it into chyme, but then it's going to also eventually move it downward. Okay, vomiting. We talked about this before, how vomiting is actually a very important function of the stomach. It's important at sometimes in our life that we have to get something out of our stomach in sort of a dramatic way. And I'm assuming all of you have experienced the process of vomiting. You know, there's nothing you can do, right? There's nothing you can do about it, and that stomach is just going to squeeze itself so hard, and the stuff has to go somewhere, and it goes right up. And since it's got the acid in there, and it goes up into your esophagus and out of your body, you may have noticed that vomiting is a little bit painful. It hurts coming up, right? We don't want all that acid coming up, but sometimes we need to get rid of it. All right, and there is some absorption going on in the stomach, a little bit of absorption of water, but not for the most part. The absorption of nutrients is going to take place elsewhere, not in the stomach. All right, so you may want to pause the video and write down the functions of the stomach. All right, once it gets into the stomach, we can see here it's fallen into the stomach, and it starts breaking down immediately because there's all this acid that is washing it. Keep in mind it's also moving it around, it's kind of squishing it around. HCl, hydrochloric acid, is a strong acid. It serves to continue the chemical breakdown of the food. All right, so we're going to look now specifically at how that acid is made in the stomach. Okay, so in the lining of the inner part of the stomach, you're going to see here, look at the mucosa. Remember what that means? That's going to be tissue that does have some mucus coming into it, okay? And then below that, and then down here we have all those muscles, all those tunics that are going to make it powerful right here. But we're concerned right here about the pits that called a gastric pit, okay? So here it is, up close. We can see down here all these cells. This looks familiar, doesn't it? It looks like one of our glands or something. And notice we have a cell right here, a chief cell that's going to actually squeeze the acid into this pit right here, okay? Enterodocrine cell right here, that's going to be some of our digestive enzymes as well. So as it squeezes out, the surface right here is covered with a fairly thick coating of mucus. Here we're just showing how if there's too much acid coming up, it goes right into here and causes a little bit of a burn in the lower esophagus right there. That's heartburn or acid reflux. All right, so back to our stomach. I'm looking at those tunics again. We keep our food in our stomach, depending on what it is, about 2 to 4 hours. And the small intestine, 1 to 4 hours, and the large intestine up to days, 6 hours to days, depending on how well your system is moving, if you will. Also, depending on what you ate, when you eat whole foods and things like that, which we'll talk about here, they tend to go through the digestive system a little more quickly, whereas highly processed foods get kind of, for lack of a better term, kind of stuck in there. Okay. All right, the stomach is layered, providing that muscular power, and the surface of it has a protective coating. Now look at it here. Can you see it, how shiny it looks? This is obviously a little camera that's been put down into somebody's stomach there, the stomach lining right there. It contains the pits, which secrete gastric juices, including hydrochloric acid, pepsin, gastrin, which is a hormone, and something called intrinsic factor. That's a chemical necessary for the absorption of vitamin B12. Interesting. That kind of real convoluted shape right there is they're called rugae. Rugae is just the word used to talk about how that's kind of all wrinkly on the inside, okay? When I say wrinkly, it's kind of squished together, so when you fill up your stomach, it can stretch really easily, okay? So it stretches easily. I kind of think of like one of those punch balloons that are kind of folded, and you blow them up and they get real big. That's kind of like your stomach there. All right, here's a cross section of the gastric pits. Right here in the pink part right there where the chief cells are, right? Those are the ones that are letting out the acid right there. And then look here, mucosa, all the mucus at the top to keep anything. That's how the stomach can release all that very strong acid and not burn the stomach itself. Okay, because it has all that mucus in there. That's why that picture just previous, this picture looks so shiny. Okay, that's normal. But what about ulcers? So there are some people that have a problem. We call it, look, PEP again, peptic ulcer. Sometimes something happens where that mucosal layer right there gets somehow damaged. Sometimes we make too much acid, that'll do it. And if it does start to eat into the stomach right there, that is painful. We call that a stomach ulcer. If it should do this is called a perforated ulcer. In other words, stuff is leaking out of the stomach into your peritoneal cavity. That is a serious, serious condition right there. First of all, you'll be in a ton of pain, but all this will be leaking in there and cause a serious infection. All right, now that we're out of the stomach, we're going to enter into the small intestine. Okay, and the small intestine has 3 major parts, and these are important for you to know. Okay, now the small intestine is called small because of the diameter of the tube. The tube has got a small diameter. It's much, much longer than the large intestine. It's just not as wide as it is, okay? All right, 3 main functions. Number 1, to mix and propel the chyme that has just been put into it from the stomach. 2, digestion, breaking it down some more, but the biggie right here is absorption. What's it going to absorb? The nutrients from your food, okay? The nutrients from your food. There are 3 main sections. You need to memorize these. Number 1, the duodenum or the duodenum. If you pronounce it duodenum, you'll be able to spell it better, more easily right there. But most people do pronounce it duodenum. Then comes the jejunum. Notice how long it is. So the duodenum's about 1 foot long. Jejunum about 8 feet. And the ileum, the last part of it, is about 11 feet long. So that is a long tube right there. Notice it's all kind of squished inside your abdomen like that, right? That's why it's shaped the way it is. It gives it all of that area. It's nice bendy tube, but it doesn't flatten out. That's important. And it's kind of squished into your abdominal cavity right there. Okay, so that is, of course, to increase surface area, and we're going to see that it's even more surface area because of the physiology and the anatomy of the actual tissue inside. Okay, here we go. A lumen is the hole in the tube. So a hole in the tube right there is called the lumen, and this is obviously a tube all the way through. Okay, that's just a vocabulary word. All right, we have intestinal juices that are in the in the small intestine. Okay, these are used to break down the food. So we're having some chemical breakdown here. And because it had all that acid, remember, it had all that acid in the stomach, and then we're going to see now what's going to happen because interestingly, the small intestine can't really take such a high acidic content, and so we're going to see how these chemicals come in to sort of mitigate that. The picture over here is just a picture of a folded protein, and so a lot of these are like long proteins. So the first one is maltase. That breaks down maltose, which is a type of sugar. Sucrase, breaking down sucrose, which is the most common type of sugar, the table sugar, the stuff you put into your iced tea. Lactase is breaking down lactose, which is the kind of sugar found in milk products, other dairy products. Peptidase, the breakdown of peptide bonds, in other words, breaking down proteins. Notice the pep again, remember having to do the stomach. Enterokinase, it activates trypsinogen, which activates trypsin to break down a protein. Okay, so these are all ways of breaking down protein. So you can probably guess right now, breaking down a protein is more difficult than breaking down a sugar. Sugars are broken down very quickly, especially the monosaccharides. We want to get down, that's our goal, is to make a monosaccharide. Even from the proteins, we want to make a monosaccharide. And the monosaccharide we want to make is called glucose, right? So glucose is very small, and that's the thing that's going to go to our cells, enabling us to make energy, ATP, adenosine triphosphate. We'll get into the details of that in Module 14, which is, remember, I've told you all year, Module 14 is the toughest one in the book, in my opinion. All right, the small intestine now. Remember, I told you how long it is, right? And now we're going to look at the interior of it. Okay, the tissue layers are similar to the stomach. The inner layer, though, is covered with these things called villi and microvilli. That also increases the surface area. You can see right here, it's folded on the inside, like the stomach was, but then those folds also have folds. These are the microvilli. Look at that. All along there is area for the absorption to take place. Okay, lots of increased surface area. They kind of give the inside of the intestine a velvety look. Blood vessels actually reach up right here, and therefore the nutrients can go straight into the blood. We have goblet cells. Remember those all the way back from Module 2. Goblet cells release mucus. We know the stomach and the intestine have lots of mucus in them. All right, the hormones that are secreted include secretin that help control the acid. We want to get rid of the acid now. We want to, what do you call that? Absolve the acid and make it less acidic. Neutralize. That's the word I'm looking for, neutralize. We have something called CCK. Citrokinase contracts the gallbladder. We're going to see what it does in just a minute. And GIP reduces the activity to slow emptying. We want to reduce the activity to not overwhelm the small intestine, right? Even the stomach is just kind of letting a little bit out at a time. Here's a microscope view of it. You can see right here the epithelium. This is the microvilli coming up, and all of the absorption can take place right in there. So it's epithelial tissue. Mucosae down here. Yeah, if you were looking at microscope slides, it would look something like this, once again stained. All right, this is the second half of the module now, 13B. We're going to be continuing with the digestive system. We know about the stomach and intestine. We're going to now look at the large intestine. So remember, the majority of the digestion and absorption is happening in the stomach and mostly the small intestine. Now we're going to see what happens in the rest, okay? We're going to be looking at the large intestine, what it does, and then the other organs that are helping, right? The accessory organs. We'll get to those. All right, so here's our large intestine. It's large because of its diameter, not because of its length. It's not nearly as long as the small intestine, but it is much wider. So if we're looking at our belly right here, we know that it enters in through the back side of this. Here's the appendix. It enters the back of the ascending colon, the transverse going across colon, and the descending colon all the way out to the rectum right there, okay? So main job is to form feces. That's to get rid of the stuff our body doesn't want or doesn't use. We do that by absorbing water. So one of the big jobs of the large intestine is to absorb a lot of water to keep it in our bodies. If you end up with a lot of water in your feces, you've probably experienced that before. We call that diarrhea, right? Lots of water in there. It has three main parts. The cecum, which is right back here. That's where it's hard to see because the small intestine enters right into the back, right behind here. And so the cecum holds the appendix, which is called the vermiform appendix. Vermiform means it looks a little bit like a worm, okay? It's about the size of your pinky finger. The colon is ascending, transverse, and descending, right? And then the third part of it is the rectum. The rectum is a muscular area that's going to hold the feces until you're ready to get rid of it. All right, so let's take a look at it. Now you can see where the small intestine is coming in through the back. Here it comes. The ileum, right, is coming in, right? You can kind of see entering right there. Right there. And then, oh, I'm sorry, I need to go back. I clicked that by accident. Because the vermiform appendix is right here. Enters here. We're going to see what this does here in just a minute. Okay, and we can see all that kind of muscular tissue, because remember, it's going to have to go up. We have the ileocecal sphincter right here. Okay. It regulates the amount of chyme leaving the small intestine. It kind of slows it down a little bit. We think the appendix right here has a whole lot to do with the lymphatic system. We talked about that, right? So there's very important bacteria living in the colon. It can actually kind of hide inside the vermiform appendix right there. It makes vitamins K, B9, and B7. These are all very important. It takes about 8 days for your intestine to start making vitamin K, and that is very important for the process of blood clotting. I think we mentioned that during the blood clotting area. And so we have to wait, babies need to wait about 8 days before they have any cutting done on them. Okay, so peristaltic action moves the feces all the way up and over and around to the rectum for elimination. And then the anal sphincter, we'll get to that in just a second, is voluntary muscle so we can control defecation. That's fortunate. Now, little babies, of course, can't, so that's why they poop in their diaper, right? That's why they wear a diaper. But as adults, of course, we can control that, thank goodness, right? So we can decide. We'll have an urge or whatever, and we'll go and we'll take care of it. Let's watch a little video. Oh, Ted Ed, love it.
Flatulence, or passing gas, is a normal daily phenomenon. Most individuals, yes, that includes you, will make anywhere from 500 to 1500 milliliters of gas and can pass gas 10 to 20 times a day. But where does this bodily gas come from? A small proportion may come from ingesting air during sleep or at other times, but the majority of gas is produced by bacteria in our intestines as they digest parts of food which we cannot. Our intestine is home to trillions of bacteria living in a symbiotic relationship with us. We provide them with a safe place to stay and food to eat. In exchange, they help us extract energy from our food, make vitamins for us like vitamin B and K, boost our immune system, and play an important role in gastrointestinal barrier function, motility, and the development of various organ systems. Clearly, it's in our best interest to keep these bacteria happy. Gut bacteria get their nutrition primarily from undigested food, such as carbohydrates and proteins, which come to the large intestine. They ferment this undigested food to produce a wide range of compounds, such as short-chain fatty acids, and of course, gases. Hydrogen and carbon dioxide are the most common gaseous products of bacterial fermentation and are odorless. Some people also produce methane due to specific microbes present in their gut, but methane is actually odorless too. Well then, what stinks? The foul smell is usually due to volatile sulfur compounds, such as hydrogen sulfide and methanethiol, or methyl mercaptan. These gases, however, constitute less than 1% of volume, and are often seen with ingestion of amino acids containing sulfur, which may explain the foul smell of gas from certain high-protein diets. Increased passage of gas is commonly noticed after eating foods with high amounts of indigestible carbohydrates, like beans, lentils, dairy products, onions, garlic, leeks, radishes, potatoes, oats, wheat, cauliflower, broccoli, cabbage, and Brussels sprouts. Humans lack the enzymes, so the bacteria able to ferment complex carbohydrates take over, and this naturally leads to more gas than usual. But if you feel uncomfortable, bloated, or visibly distended, this may indicate impaired movement of gas along the gastrointestinal tract. It's important not to just blame certain foods for gas and bloating and then avoid them. You don't want to starve the bacteria that digest these complex carbohydrates, or they'll have to start eating the sugars in the mucus lining of your intestines. Your personal gas will vary based on what you eat and what bacteria are in your gut. For example, from the same starting sugar, the bacteria Clostridium produces carbon dioxide, butyrate, and hydrogen, while Propionibacterium can produce carbon dioxide, propionate, and acetate. At the same time, methanogens can use hydrogen and carbon dioxide produced by other bacteria to generate methane, which can reduce the total volume of gas by using up hydrogen and carbon dioxide. So there's a complex web among intestinal bacteria, allowing them to flourish by either directly consuming undigested food or using what other bacteria produce. This interaction largely determines the amount and type of gas produced, so gas production is a sign that your gut bacteria are at work. But in some instances, people may develop abnormal increased flatulence. A common example is lactose intolerance. Most individuals have the enzyme for breaking down lactose, a sugar present in milk and milk-derived products. But some people either lack it entirely or have a reduced amount, such as after a gastrointestinal infection. So they're unable to digest lactose products and may experience cramping, along with increased flatulence due to bacterial fermentation. But remember, most gas is produced as a natural result of bacterial fermentation in the intestine and indicates healthy functioning of the gut. The amount and type can vary based on your diet and the bacteria in your intestine. Exercise social courtesy while passing gas, and do try to forgive your bacteria. They're only trying to be helpful.
Okay, once again, the importance of the microbiome. I'm so happy people have decided that that microorganisms are not our enemy. They are really very, very helpful. We'll look into the thing about probiotics and things like that here in just a second. I think that's the same one. Okay. All right, let's take a look at the appendix real quick. So I like it shows the intestine coming in here. It kind of joins in the back there. And here's our vermiform appendix right here, okay? So what happens is that this right here, since it's off to the side sometimes, it can get some things stuck in it, usually very small things like the seeds from a strawberry or the seeds from poppy seed bread or something like that, or poppy seed muffins. And they can get stuck in there and cause an irritation. All right, so you can get something known as appendicitis. That just means an inflammation of the appendix. So there comes a time sometimes that the appendix can get so inflamed and so infected that it will cause a problem for you, and you may have to have it removed. You might know somebody who's had an appendectomy, right? Had their appendix removed. And that's because it keeps getting infected all the time. And so we used to think for a while that it was a vestigial organ. And what that means is that it was an organ that did not have any function anymore. But then we discovered there was a lot of lymphatic tissue in there. So we do know that it does have a function. It's the best if you can keep your appendix, but you can live without it if you have to. It's always the best to keep it, but you can live without it. So normally it looks like this. Remember, it's supposed to be like a finger, a vermiform, like a little worm, like your pinky finger. If it gets inflamed, it'll start to look like this, and it will hurt. Very, very painful. So if it gets to the point where you have the problem over and over again or something like that, or if it gets so bad that you can't stand it, they will remove it. And you can see right here what they'll do is they'll just come in. That's a blood vessel. So they'll tie off the blood vessel. They'll tie it off right here and just suture it. And therefore, it just isn't there anymore, okay? And we can live without it. You will be, of course, without that lymphatic tissue, okay? So if it gets to the point where it's so bad and you don't get it taken care of, let's say you're in a place that doesn't have a doctor nearby, in a foreign country or something, or you're a person who doesn't believe in going to the doctors, there are some people like that, you can have a rupture of the appendix. It can rupture, okay? If that happens, all of that bacteria, all of that fecal matter will go right into your abdominal peritoneal cavity, okay? That is very bad news. You do not want that to happen. It'll kill you. So, the silent screen star Rudy Valentino actually died from an untreated burst appendix. Now, he was a famous silent movie actor. He was world famous. I mean, the guy, I can't even express to you how famous he was. I'm going to have my crying emoji coming up here because his funeral went on like for days with people coming to, view the casket and things like this because he didn't have that treated, and he would have been in a ton of pain to boot. So if you have that, let's see where it is in your body. So on your right side, let's go back here for a second. Okay, it's on your right side of your body. There we go. And I've had 2 different students who had to have emergency appendectomies. They were young men, and they were probably, I'm going to say, 14 or 15 years old, maybe even 16 years old, and had to have it go removed. And I asked the one student if it's true that if the doctor presses on the right abdomen, because you're in pain, and he presses on it, it hurts. When he lets go, it hurts even more. That's one of the indications that it's an appendix. Yikes. I also had some younger students, like age 8, that had to have appendectomies. So it's not that unusual to have it taken out. But keep in mind, it's better to keep it in. Okay, got to go through these pictures real quick. There's poor Rudy Valentino. All right, now we're going to change gears a little bit and talk about our accessory organs. Now, the first one we're going to look at is the liver. The liver is a very large organ. Apart from your skin, which is your largest organ, I believe it is the largest organ in our body. It has actually 4 quadrants to it. We're looking at the left lobe and the right lobe. We're going to see a little more detail here in just a second. Tucked behind it, you can see the gallbladder. We'll get to that here in just a minute. The liver has so many important, functions. You cannot live without your liver. You can live without part of your liver. Some people have had part of their liver removed, but you can't live without it. Okay, let's see what here's our anatomy. 2 large lobes, that's the left and the right, okay, and 2 small lobes, you can't see it, the caudate and the quadrate. It's, if you were doing a dissection, you would see it very easily. Blood supplied by something called the hepatic artery. So you hear the word hep, that means having to do with the liver. So we have the hepatic artery and the hepatic vein, which I think I'm going to show you a picture here in just a minute on that one. It has a lot of blood coming to it, highly vascular. And then the actual cells are formed into these things called lobules, okay? They're hexagonal shaped. They're designed to absorb nutrients and oxygen. Cells use what they need, they store the rest. So that's one of the jobs of the liver is storage. It then assigns nutrients, that's another job, to take to their proper place. And the depleted blood, in other words, the blood without the nutrients, departs via the hepatic vein, going back toward the heart, right? To the inferior vena cava to go up, back up to the heart. Meanwhile, bile is manufactured in the little bag here called the gallbladder. We'll get to that. All right, let's look at these lobules a little closer. See, I said they have the six-sided, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And you can see we have let's see, make sure the portal area. The blue should be the vein, yeah, hepatic vein. Does it tell us where the artery is? We have a bile duct here. We're going to see what bile is in just a second. That comes from the gallbladder. Here's the hepatic artery right here, the red one. So that one, okay? All right, look at all the activity that's going on inside there. All of that cellular activity, they're all, pushed very closely together right here. And lots, very, very highly vascular, right? Lots of blood supply. All right, let's see the 6 functions. This is important. You need to write these down. You might need to pause the video and to give yourself time to write these down. Number 1, bile production. So keep in mind the production of bile is coming from the liver. The liver is making it, okay? We need bile because it acts honestly like a little bit like soap. Think about if you're washing a greasy dish, right? It makes it easier to wash if you put soap on it, right? So that's very similar to what's happening here. The bile breaks down greasy things. It helps with fat digestion. It happens to be green in color. And that's why when you see this, the gallbladder literally is green because it's holding bile in it. The gallbladder's job is not to make bile, it's to hold the bile. We'll get to it in just a second. The liver will also store nutrients. It actually stores, reserve glucose that it will hold on to in a different form, and then it will actually send it out to your body if, say, you don't get a chance to eat. Your liver will send glucose to your cells. So it's a kind of a rescue system if you don't eat. Also, if you're doing a fast or something like that, you're not eating on purpose, you'll have plenty of storage glucose you won't die from having a 1 or 2 day fast, something like that. Processing nutrients. Okay, they convert the glucose, here it is. They're going to take the excess glucose and hold it in the form of glycogen. The glycogen stays in the liver, and then when the liver is told to release it to the body, the glycogen is converted back into glucose to be used in the process of the Krebs cycle, which we'll learn about next time. Chemical synthesis, they're putting things together in here, and one of the examples I've given you is prothrombin and fibrinogen. Do those sound familiar? Remember blood clotting? We need those, and that's the liver that is told to manufacture those, to synthesize those. Number 5, phagocytosis. This is where old white blood cells and red blood cells go to die, along with bacteria that have been neutralized. So that's an important job, isn't it? It's going to go in there and just kind of chew up and reconstitute or recycle parts and then get rid of other parts. Detox. You might have heard of this. Detox converts ammonia to urea, sends it to the kidneys for urine, and it just kind of takes any kind of toxins that might be in our body and fixes those. So you might have been told, I don't know if you've ever eaten liver, like you can go get beef liver at a store. It's very high in iron, which is really nice because iron is, it's in the blood because it's a very highly vascular organ right there. When I was a kid, my mom would try to serve us liver. I did not like it at all. It was one of those things that my dog was very happy because he would wait under the table and I would slip it to him under the table because I did not like it. I don't like the texture of it. I don't like the flavor of it. And I know that is where detox takes place, so there's toxins in there. I don't like liver, but I have found out since that time that liver is one of the best sources of iron. So if you can take like liver pills or something instead of eating liver, you can get it at the grocery store. They sell it for people to eat. So if you want to ask your folks to buy some liver for you, then just take a look at it. Bring it home and cut it into pieces and look at it. You're going to see It's first of all very red because it's highly vascular. But if you cut into it, you might be able to see some of those little vessels that are in there. You know, there might be some big enough to see. But generally, it's kind of a slimy looking slab of blah. Yeah. All right, we're going to watch this video from TED Ed about the liver. Fabulous.
There's a factory inside you that weighs about 1.4 kilograms and runs for 24 hours a day. This is your liver, the heaviest organ in your body and one of the most crucial. This industrious structure simultaneously acts as a storehouse, a manufacturing hub, and a processing plant. And each of these functions involves so many important subtasks that without the liver, our bodies would simply stop working. One of the liver's main functions is to filter the body's blood, which it receives in regular shipments from two sources. The hepatic artery delivers blood from the heart, while the hepatic portal vein brings it from the intestine. This double delivery fills the liver with nutrients that it then sorts, processes, and stores with the help of thousands of tiny internal processing plants known as lobules. Both blood flows also deliver the oxygen that the liver needs to function. The blood that is received from the intestine contains carbohydrates, fats, and vitamins and other nutrients dissolved in it from the food you've consumed. These must be processed in different ways. In the case of carbohydrates, the liver breaks them down and converts them into sugars for the body to use as energy when the filtered blood is sent back out. Sometimes the body has leftovers of nutrients that it doesn't immediately require. When that happens, the liver holds some back and stacks them in its storage facility. This facility works like a pantry for future cases when the body might be in need of nutrients. But the blood flowing into the liver isn't always full of good things. It also contains toxins and byproducts that the body can't use, and the liver monitors these strictly. When it spots a useless or toxic substance, it either converts it into a product that can't hurt the body or isolates it and whisks it away, channeling it through the kidneys and intestine to be excreted. Of course, we wouldn't consider the liver a factory if it didn't also manufacture things. This organ makes everything from various blood plasma proteins that transport fatty acids and help form blood clots, to the cholesterol that helps the body create hormones. It also makes vitamin D and substances that help digestion. But one of its most vital products is bile. Like an eco-friendly treatment plant, the liver uses cells called hepatocytes to convert toxic waste products into this bitter greenish liquid. As it's produced, bile is funneled into a small container below the liver called the gallbladder before being trickled into the intestine to help break down fats, destroy microbes, and neutralize extra stomach acid. Bile also helps carry other toxins and byproducts from the liver out of the body. So as you can see, the liver is an extremely efficient industrial site, performing multiple tasks that support each other. But such a complex system needs to be kept running smoothly by keeping it healthy and not overloading it with more toxins than it can handle. This is one factory we simply can't afford to shut down.
All right, there we go. Yeah, how important all those functions that the liver has. That's the same one right there. We're going to get to the gallbladder here in just a second. I will tell you this. I told you you can live without part of your liver. There are some people that might need a liver transplant, right? If their liver is not functioning. I'm thinking mostly about little babies who are born with a non-functioning liver. Oftentimes, a sibling or a parent can donate part of their liver for a transplant, which is interesting. Furthermore, another interesting feature about this is if somebody needs an organ transplant, let's say somebody needs a kidney transplant. When they get the kidney transplant, it turns out that they take better or they do better in the recipient's body if you also transplant part of the liver as well. I had a student one time said, well, you just throw some of the liver in there. Well, no, you actually have to transplant it, so you have to hook it up and all that kind of stuff with all the vessels and that kind of thing. But it apparently helps other transplants to take better. So I wonder if it has something to do with, helping the immune system, helping the body to recognize it as not foreign, something along those lines. I'm not exactly sure. But anyway, the liver is indeed a super important organ. So you saw in the video right here, it tells you about the gallbladder. The gallbladder's job is just to store the bile, but keep in mind the bile is made in the liver. Watch out for a trick question that might say, where is bile made? Well, if the question is where is it made, it's made in the liver. But if the question says where is the bile stored, it's stored in the gallbladder. Okay, so watch out carefully for that little trick. When it's ready, it'll be concentrated in the gallbladder. That's kind of nice. It concentrates it into a very kind of strong soapy mixture, right? And then it gets added to the small intestine. PRN means as needed. So if you have a fatty meal, then you're going to be squeezing some more bile into the intestine at that point. It emulsifies the fats. Emulsifying just means it's going to gather around them just the way soap gathers around grease on your dishes that you're cleaning. It also raises the pH. Remember, the pH was very low, like 1.5 from the stomach, from the hydrochloric acid. We need to bring that pH a little bit up a little so it's not quite so acidic. And sometimes you can have a disease in your gallbladder. You may know people. There are people, women of a certain age, in fact, grandma types, have problems with their gallbladders all the time. I still, fortunately, do have my gallbladder very happily. Sometimes if you are dehydrated, remember, water is so good for you. If you're dehydrated, sometimes cholesterol and other things can solidify inside of your gallbladder, forming what is known as a gallstone. All right, I'm going to show you a picture of gallstones. It's kind of disturbing, so get yourself ready. Take a look at it here. Oh, here, we'll get to it in just a second. You're going to see where it's located. Remember, it's storing it right here, so it gets its stuff from the liver. The liver's like right there on top of it. It'll squirt it out right here into, look, right there, the small intestine, in the duodenum, right? It's called the common bile duct because that is coming from the liver going into the gallbladder, some of it into there, and then common because the gallbladder and the liver are sharing it. Okay, now I'm going to give you the disturbing picture. Can you live without your gallbladder? The answer is yes, you can. Because remember, it's only storing this stuff. It's being made in the liver, so you can't live without your liver, but you can live without your gallbladder. Sometimes you will have to eat less fatty foods if you don't have your gallbladder. You may know somebody who doesn't have it. But here we're going to see the duct right here, common bile duct and the cystic duct. Sometimes those stones will form, those gallbladder stones, gallstones. Look at this one right down here, gallstone blocking this. That's painful. In fact, some people who have gallstones or even a gallbladder spasm, it'll kind of spasm and the muscle will start to move around on its own. Some people who have had that feel like they're having a heart attack. It's that painful. And it's kind of in the area there right behind the heart. So here's a stone. This is not the disturbing picture, by the way. You can see there's a ruler there showing you how large it is. All right, notice it's green because bile is green. It looks like it's been made over time like a jawbreaker, right? Little layers right here. Here comes the disturbing picture. Okay, that's a diseased gallbladder right there. Absolutely chock full of gallstones. This gallbladder obviously had to be removed completely because it was not even functioning anymore. So probably a lot of dehydration going on here. This is why it's super important. So, go grab a drink of water right now while we're thinking about it. Okay. All right, here we go. Liver's right here. Boom. Stomach is right about here. Now we have the pancreas. We know about the pancreas. We've learned about it. Remember, it makes a very, very important couple of hormones, right? Namely, we've got our two main hormones, but mainly we've got the big one needed for, getting the glucose around called insulin, right? Okay. Here we go. In addition to its role in the endocrine system, right, that's making a hormone, the pancreas secretes juices into the duodenum where it neutralizes the chyme, right there. It neutralizes it because the chyme is very acidic, okay? It produces enzymes that help break down proteins into peptides, so it's doing all that. We call those the digestive juices or the pancreatic juices, okay? It secretes amylase to break down polysaccharides, that's sugars, lipase to break down fats, and nuclease to break down DNA and RNA. Why would we have DNA and RNA? Because we're eating living things. Plants have DNA and RNA. Animals have DNA and RNA. We eat those, we have to break them down. And we break them down with nuclease. Can you live without your pancreas? Absolutely not. It is absolutely essential. You have it. You can't even live without part of it. You've got to have it, okay? And in fact, when you have pancreatitis, in fact, I meant to mention to you that when your liver is inflamed, it's called hepatitis, usually caused by a disease, either a virus or something like that, even a toxin, it's something like that. But we call it pancreatitis, right? And it oftentimes can result with pancreatic cancer, which is really, really, really bad. All right, enzymes to break down the protein. Here are some names of them. We have trypsinogen to make trypsin, chymotrypsinogen, or procarboxypeptidase. Wow, that's a big one. All of those are being made in our pancreas. Oh, I thought I had more pictures. I guess in our immune, when we talked about the immune system, we showed the pancreas, a little more of its anatomy. So you can go back and check that. All right, now we're going to talk about nutrition. What's for dinner? Okay, let's talk about what we put into our digestive system. Okay, a little bit of preaching coming up right now. Okay, we have macronutrients that we need. We must get these from our diet in order to survive. We need carbohydrates, we need fats, and we need proteins. Now, you can talk to all sorts of specialists out there, dietitians, and people like that. And there's so much debate all the time. You've probably heard some things are good for you, some things are bad for you. Oh my goodness, my goodness. So many, we're still discovering is really the bottom line of it right here. But I will tell you that of our macronutrients, the easiest ones to turn into glucose are carbohydrates. That happens very quickly, okay? The hardest ones are proteins, but you can get the glucose from your proteins. There are some people out there who practice the carnivore diet, right? And it tends to actually be quite a healthy diet, but you will, remember our flatulence video, it will produce more gases, okay? If you're willing to live with that, that's okay. But they pretty much they eat pretty much proteins and fats and don't really add extra carbohydrates to their diet, which is, I don't know, I can't live without my fruits and vegetables personally. Okay, I just kind of like those. I do like meat, however. I will say that if you eat your meat, you will get everything you need to make your proteins to build your body up, okay? If you want to practice vegetarianism, you're going to have to really work hard at it because you can't get everything from vegetarianism. Now, when I was growing up, I looked up the history of this a little bit. Apparently, this actual food pyramid didn't come out until I was already grown up. But I remember as a kid talking about following the dietary guidelines of the government. Anytime the government is going to tell you something to do, you need to maybe find some more research, okay? The government really is not designed to tell us what to eat, okay? We need experts. We do have certain, parts of the government. I don't want to get political at all. I'm just saying there are people who their job is to hire the best dietitians and use the latest information to figure out what we should eat. Here's what I'm going to tell you. This food pyramid, I've said this for years and years and years. This is a bunch of bunk, okay? It's if you ate everything it told you, 6 to 11 servings of bread, cereals, rice, pastas, 2 to 4 servings of fruit, 3 to 5 servings of veg. I don't know how anybody can eat that much food. That is a whole lot of food right there, y'all. And so I remember thinking, this is a ridiculous guideline, okay? Listen to your body for one, okay? So they changed it a little bit later. They said, okay, let's simplify it. I don't know if you feel like this looks simpler to you. I never felt like it simplified things. It still tells us to get most of our food from the grain area, right? I'm going to disagree wholeheartedly with that. And then we can see over here the where's the meat section? Right over here, kind of a smaller meats and beans, kind of a smaller. I disagree with that, okay? I think the grain is way overstated. Cereals and stuff, those things are highly processed. Everything in the grain area here is highly processed. You don't actually go out into a wheat field and grab the wheat and eat it. It has to be processed to turn into bread or whatever, something like that, okay? So I would be very dubious. You, of course, talk to your folks about that. I'm not saying don't ever eat bread. I'm just saying don't make it be this much of your consumption during the day. All right, so we do have some good news from our, CDC, HHS, the Health and Human Services group, right? So that's the Trump administration. In 2026, they released the new dietary guidelines for Americans. I, for one, I'm not being political at all here. I'm just saying I, for one, am so happy that they made this change. This makes much more sense. We basically turned the thing upside down, right? So that, look at, the grains are the smallest amount of things. I completely and 100% agree with this. You can talk to your folks or to family members, and they may disagree with me, and that's okay. that's fine. I just think it's probably a really good plan to have our meats and stuff over here. Look, we have meats, even cheeses, and then our healthy fats, our vegetables, fruits, even a little bit less of the fruits. The reason why fruits aren't as great as vegetables for you is that fruits do have a lot of sugar in them. All right, and sugar is going to make your pancreas secrete a whole lot of, insulin, and we want to just be careful with that as all. Healthy fats, we're looking at some of these healthy fats right here. Let's look at some a little close up. Here we can see here the new food pyramid explained. We have our grains and stuff. The smaller amounts here, I think probably the government, the guy that runs the government HHS would say leave these out completely. I don't know about you, but I find some joy when I can have a little bit of a sweet thing, right, at the end of the day or the end of the week or something along those lines. But notice how at the very top now, what we have is the largest group is going to be our healthy proteins and good fats. And then we have our vegetables and a smaller part of the fruits here, and then the whole grain. So I am, for one, I am very happy. Here's my heart shape over here. Happy that they've made this change. Once again, you don't have to do anything the government tells you as long as you're not breaking a law. So you get to pick your own food. But I'm just going to give you some advice on how to make good choices about what you're going to eat. Okay, so let's talk about the carbs. Why do we need carbs? We talk about complex carbohydrates. We call polysaccharides right down here. Grains, plant cell walls, things like that. Simples would be, see, it's already broken down pretty much to a monosaccharide in our fructose. Fructose is C6H12O6, just like glucose, just arranged a little differently. If it's got the same, components, you can see how that can easily be turned to glucose. Keep in mind, that's what we want here. We want glucose. Glucose is what's going to run our body and give us our energy. We need ATP, right? That's always our answer, adenosine triphosphate. And so carbohydrates are the easiest, fastest way to get those, especially something like this. Okay, takes a little more work to break down starches and cellulose. We talked about that. Maybe we didn't. Cellulose is what's inside the cell wall of plants. It's not really all that digestible. We might refer to it as something like quote unquote fiber. Okay, fiber is to help keep your large intestine nice and supple. It keeps you from having feces that's formed that's too hard. So in other words, constipation, right? So fiber is supposed to help with that. There are some new studies coming down on that fiber is not quite as important as some people have said in the past. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. Dietitians are always making new discoveries, right? So look at this picture over here of some of these complex carbohydrates right here. So aside from these potatoes, which are starchy for sure, all this other stuff right here is highly, highly processed. That means it looks nothing like what it came from. Maybe the rice a little bit's okay right here. I don't know if that's quinoa maybe, but quinoa, was it quinoa? Yeah, couscous is a pasta. All the pastas and the breads right here have something called gluten in there, naturally occurring. And we've changed everything so much just by our farming techniques that it's made it more difficult for our body to recognize these as actual foods. Okay, so I'm just going to say be careful with your highly processed foods, uber processed foods. In fact, it'd be good to avoid them altogether. I don't know about you. I'd rather not live in a world that doesn't have any bread. I like bread. A pasta every now and then. You can't complain about a good Italian restaurant, right? All right, berries are good for us. This is where we get some of our carbs. There'll be some really quick glucose for us because it's going to break down from the fructose, right? So berries are good. We remember if you took Biology 1, you remember how a lot of these aren't actually berries, right? They are some other kind of fruit. But we have the acai. Those are yummy in chocolate. Any of these covered in chocolate are delicious, right? Although chocolate, of course, has sugar. Highly processed as well. Blueberries, cranberries, blackberries, goji berries, gooseberries, raspberries, strawberries, elderberries, bilberries. These are all very, especially the very colorful ones, right? If you have some dark colored fruits, bright red, purple, anything you find that's colored like that, deep colors like that are always super, super good for you. All right, lipids. All right, fats. when I was a young mom, there was a kit going around that we were all getting, that Americans were getting too fat because we were eating too many fatty foods, and therefore they were making all these processed foods that were low in fat. I didn't buy it ever, even then. I said, forget that. That you take the fat out of food, you've taken all of the flavor out of food. So here's the deal. We just want to make sure and have healthy fats, okay? We need something called omega-3 fatty acids, linoleic acid. And it can be found in things like fish, especially salmon. Very, very good for us. Use wild caught because it's healthier. Spinach, soy, pumpkin seeds. It's interesting, Americans aren't really big into pumpkin seeds. I know I've been down to Mexico and they have them on the table all the time. They're called pepitas. They're delicious. We should eat them more because there's some omega-3 fatty acids in those. Omega-6s are also, sometimes we overeat the omega-6s, so we need to kind of balance those out a little better. Go with the omega-3. The omega-6s, I don't know that you have to think about those so much. We get them regularly in some foods. Oils and eggs. Now, when I say salad oils, we've come out now with really any kind of seed oil that comes from a seed, even vegetable oil and whatever canola oil is, those are all terrible, okay? We don't want any seed oils is what we've decided now. What I'm showing up here is olive oil. Olive oil's good. You have to get a good quality one, maybe one that's made in your state nearby because it tends to go rancid fairly easily. So I would say the best oil to use is avocado oil. We can see right here from the avocado. The oil from the avocado doesn't come from the seed or the skin. It comes from the flesh. It's unusual that it would come from the flesh like that. The olive oil comes from the flesh of the olive as well. Other ones come from the seeds like cottonseed, and just avoid all of those. Yeah, that's the newest the newest research is telling us that. Eggs are, at one point we said eggs are bad for you. No. Eggs are a superfood. They're very, very good for you. You can eat them, and they're so versatile. You can do anything with them, not to mention baking, right? Those are good too. They help with prostaglandin formation. We know that as far as bringing down inflammation, right? Other healthy fats include avocados, nuts. Some nuts are better than others. I think if you remember from Biology 1, if you learned about cashews, come from an apple type thing called the cashew apple. They're not as healthy for you. I think my understanding is now, as of 2026, the healthiest nuts for us are raw walnuts. I think pistachios are really good as well. Pecans, those are all good. I think that the almond, that coating, that brown coating on there is a little concerning for somebody. I can't remember why at this point. Coconut, awesome. Coconut oil, very good. And then we're going to see meats and stuff right here, fatty meats. For instance, if you eat chicken, sometimes people would take the skin off. Well, the skin has a lot of fat in it, so go ahead and cook your chicken with the skin on, and I can understand if you want to take it off before you eat it, that's fine. But if you're eating like fried chicken, which every now and then you want to do that, eat some fried chicken, right? Yeah, eat that crunchy stuff, that crunchy skin, so good. Other fatty meats, look, they have fish and shrimp and stuff like that down here. Yes, I'm a big fan of avocados. As you can see right here, it's God's gift to us. You can eat avocados, raw. You can cook them. You can smash them. You can just do all. You can put them into your smoothie, and it makes your smoothie smoother. I mean, they're just so good, and they're full of really, really great fat. They also have a very thick skin on them, and so therefore that kind of keeps the toxins in the skin, and we don't eat it, so we throw it away, right? And so therefore you can actually get a good healthy avocado and not have to pay more for organic on the avocados, which is nice. Okay, proteins. Here's the king of the dietary action going on here. And the reason that's the case is because proteins are made up of long chains of amino acids, okay? And those amino acids we basically take the protein that we eat, we break it down into amino acids, and we reassemble those to build up muscle in our body. But it can also further be broken down into glucose. It takes longer, and it's more complicated, but you can get it. So in other words, if you're eating strictly carnivore diet, it's fine. You'll get everything you need, okay? About 20 of these total, 20 to 23 of these, 11 which are essential. That means we have to get them from our diet. We can get all of them. If you're eating red meat, then you're getting everything you need, okay? Otherwise, if you're not eating red meat, then you have to be really careful to make sure that you're getting your amino acids from somewhere. We call it completing a protein. Why combining foods together. Right here, rice and beans apparently is one of those. Beans are very high in protein. And if you combine it with rice, you're going to get all of the amino acids you want. But I've heard very recently, I've heard people saying that even then you're still not getting the quality or even perhaps all of the essential amino acids unless you're eating meat. So this person was very, very down and against vegetarianism and especially veganism. Now, that of course is your personal choice right there, but do some research on that. Some of the latest research coming down to make sure you're getting these. You don't want to live without these amino acids. You absolutely need those. And it's just you don't have to think so much about your food if you eat red meat, like steak, that beautiful looking steak up there. Okay, we also have all sorts of micronutrients. These are in small amounts. You know, we have the macronutrients, the big three, and now we have all these other ones. You might put these in the context like of a vitamin and mineral kind of a thing. They help regulate chemical processes in our bodies. A lot of them we can get from our food if we're eating healthy. But we also, some people, you probably might take a supplement of some sort, right? So you'll take a vitamin pill or something like that. Some of those are good. Some of those aren't as good. It is the best to get it from really high quality food. Sadly, in America these days, our food isn't as high quality as it used to be because we've, let our fields get less nutritious and sadly things like that. So we just have to kind of be thoughtful about getting our food. Okay, so each are vitamins. We're going to see here the vitamins we're talking about, okay? So let's start with A. Vitamins A usually are colorful, usually the reds and oranges. We have carotene in those, right? So carrots like that. We have the B's. Look at all the B's. We'll get back to those here in just a second. Let's go to vitamin C, the citric acid. A lot of vitamin C found in that. You may know people who take extra vitamin C. It's probably one of the easiest ones to get in a high quality, and it's easy to absorb. Vitamin D we're going to get from eggs and milk and mushrooms. Nice. Vitamin E, looky there, avocado, yes, right there, and some nuts. Vitamin K, remember this is being produced in our gut, but we can add to it through using some of these cruciferous vegetables. I think that might be a lettuce and then some asparagus and onion. B, so here's our B's. B1, 2, 3, 6, 7, 9, 12. If you wanted to do a little more research on the B's and why we don't have like B, 5 or that kind of thing, I'm not exactly sure. I think they've changed things around enough to do that. But we can get it through, look, we have fish. We have meat and eggs and milk. Meat, I don't know what that's supposed to be. Here's some fruits and salmon. Here's some vegetables. Here again, we have our asparagus and strawberry and avocado again. And our meats and stuff. Is that maybe that's coconut. I'm not sure exactly, but our B12s. Okay, oops. I went the wrong way. Uh-oh. Hold on. So sorry. Here we go. Sorry about that. Okay, we can see here that sometimes people take supplements like this. We have cobalt, calcium, iron, phosphorus, zinc, manganese. We did learn a lot about these kind of nutrients after we had that pandemic called COVID boo, right? That we needed certain things, namely zinc. All right, vitamin D, also very important. It turns out our body makes it when we get exposure to the sun. We talked about this in the skin module, and we looked at the skin and how it makes it, and how sun exposure is so good for you. But we do know, we're down in Texas here, so Texas, we have a very strong sunshine, right? And it can burn you. Now, burning's not good, right? But if we get out there enough to let ourselves tan a little bit, I just like the feel of it on my skin, it's going to help to convert vitamin D. Okay, so we have ultraviolet light is doing that, but we can get some vitamin D from our diet. So look here, some good stuff. Cheese, forget the margarine. Don't ever eat margarine. It's a bad, highly processed food. Go with butter. Butter is a superfood. Go with grass-fed butter, organic butter, something like that. Milk, Okay, I'll be controversial here. Raw milk is great. Okay, as long as you know where it came from and when you got it, you're good to go with the raw milk. There's a lot of controversy over that. If your parents don't like raw milk, okay, no worries. If you don't like milk, I understand. You can get your calcium and things like that from other things like cheeses. Okay, fatty fish. Here we can see I think that's salmon and probably trout. You can get vitamin D there. Zinc. Zinc is an important thing. So I put these in specifically, the vitamin D and the zinc, because we had been going through that COVID pandemic, and it turns out that almost all of us are deficient of both of these. Okay, so zinc is something you can take in a supplement, but you can get it from foods. Here we go. Oysters are very high in zinc. In fact, I was taking a supplement of zinc, and it came from oysters. Look at there, grass-fed butter, yes. Cashews, asparagus, spinach, almonds, watermelon seeds, interesting, red meat, pumpkin seeds, salmon, and cocoa, yay, dark chocolate, hooray. As long as it's not it's highly processed, chocolate has to be. If you've ever eaten a chocolate cocoa bean, they're horrible, right? But when they process it, yum. So a little bit, just in, moderation. What about sweets? Well, try to get your sweets from things like this, right? From our fruits and stuff. I know that's a little preachy. I am a big, big fan of chocolate. So I understand at least chocolate's on the list of good things to eat. But we need to just be careful with the processed food. So namely, we're just going to, there it is. There's our chocolate. Yay. Always avoid these. Oh, please avoid the artificial sweeteners. If you're going to sweeten your tea, sweeten it with real sugar, okay? And maybe try to, I put sugar in my coffee, so I'd like to drink my coffee black, but I like it with a little sweet, but not these. Okay, my mom was a big fan of the pink stuff. Don't eat those. Yeah, I say no, forget those. All right, the importance of gut microbiome. We've discussed this a couple of times. It's so important. What we can do is take probiotics. I take a capsule or something that has a probiotic that's in it. Also, if you like fermented foods, yay, okay? I'm not a huge fan. I tried some kimchi, not crazy about it. I do like sauerkraut somewhat. They say if you just have like a couple tablespoons a day, it's good. That's all you need, or something like that. There's some other things, kefir, yogurt, really high, quality yogurt, Greek yogurt, I think, yeah. Here we go, another little video. I guess it's going to talk about that.
Research shows that the gut microbiome affects a lot of how we experience our daily lives. Emotions, weight, brain functioning, even our food choices. But how does it work? The gut microbiome is a collection of trillions of microbes, or microscopic organisms. These microbes, like bacteria and fungi, live in your digestive tract, mostly in your large intestine. Digestion is just your body taking raw materials, food, and turning it into something it can use.
Nice crust.
Digestion makes glucose, which runs your brain and muscles. It also enables your body's messengers like hormones and neurotransmitters. Your digestive system is a factory for turning food into fuel, and your microbes are its workers. And what you get out of it depends a lot on the quality of what you put into it. Gut microbes have their own genes, which affect the way your human genes act. There are about 20 to 25,000 different human genes that make up your body. Sounds like a lot. But there are millions of different microbe genes inside of you that influence how your human genes act. In some studies, the microbiomes of healthy mice were transplanted into stressed mice. The stressed mice then showed fewer anxiety symptoms. Fruit flies with particular bacterial species in their microbiomes ate more protein. When researchers changed the flies' microbiomes, the flies ate more sugar. In one study, researchers found that many elite athletes have a group of bacteria that helps break down lactate and could help performance and recovery. When these bacteria were transplanted into mice, the mice's treadmill performance increased. And this is all great news, because you can't change your genes, but you can change your microbiome for the better. And one of the quickest ways to do that is through food. There are immeasurable other factors that influence your gut microbiome: where you live, sleep, exercise, stress. But what your body makes and what kind of microbes your gut has depend a lot on the food you eat. You can change your microbiome and potentially your daily experiences and long-term health through food.
Okay, there we go. I'm a big fan of the microbiome, right? So let's talk why. Why is the microbiome so important? So we have a condition called leaky gut syndrome, which a large number of Americans suffer from. And so what happens is when everything's fine over here, we have these tight junctions, right? These are our cells allowing stuff to get in. But when we have leaky gut, there's things that come in here and bigger things can squeeze through, okay? It's what we call intestinal hyperpermeability. So when we have a malfunction here, there's a guy, Dr. Axe, that was talking about all this stuff. So to keep it healthy, we need to use, it helps to have food that is not filled with toxins. All right, so things like, glyphosate, which is a chemical they spray on foods, mainly wheat type based foods. They put it on there, and the gluten comes in there, and so our microorganisms coming from elsewhere can then sneak into our gut and cause disease that way. All right, we have we don't absorb the nutrients properly. Autoimmune diseases, like we talked about last time, are on the rise. Intolerance to food, namely glutens and things like this. The blood-brain barrier breach, meaning chemicals can get into our brain. Chemicals can come in here and they can actually go through the blood-brain barrier and get into your brain. Systematic inflammation, so all over your body, pain and that kind of thing. So want to keep it healthy. So there's another condition called SIBO, or small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. And all this means that right here, this is normal, where is our food. It goes through, here's the duodenum and the jejunum and the ileum, and the digestion is completed. Well, if we have bacterial overgrowth, the bacteria kind of move down into the part where they're not supposed to be, and you have more fermentation taking place down in the lower parts of the small intestine, causing discomfort, cramping, gas, lots of gas, things like this. So once again, the food we eat will help with this. IBS, irritable bowel syndrome. There's a couple types of IBS, would be Crohn's disease, which I believe is considered autoimmune, and ulcerative colitis, where the colon is completely just filled with ulcers. It's just very, very painful. Especially certain kind of foods tend to cause it to be worse in some people. And so if you're interested in that, you can look up to see what kind of symptoms they suffer. All right, so the bottom line here for all of this is that we need to eat real food. All right, so God's design keeps us healthy. While bread has been a staple over the eons of time, people have taken and processed wheat and things like this. Other things, our body just finds it difficult to recognize it. Okay, so think about if I take an apple and I pick it from a tree and I eat it, the apple looks like what was growing on the tree, right? Okay, that's a whole food. That's what that means. It's whole. It's what it looks like, how it came out from where it needed to come from, So even an egg came out from the chicken like that. You crack it into a pan. You have to process it somewhat because you're going to cook it usually. We don't usually eat raw eggs. You're going to cook it. That's a form of processing, but you're doing it yourself. If you're processing the food yourself, if you're cutting your tomatoes and then cooking them, you're processing them yourselves, but the tomato itself was whole. If you eat salads and things like this, is all good, y'all. So just go with the whole food, eat real food. If you take a cracker out of a package and it doesn't look like a seed or something, then just it's highly processed. So you need to avoid the highly processed foods. They're not that you never ever can eat a cookie again. It's just don't make it the main part of your diet, okay? So try to go for that. Sorry for the preaching. Talk to your folks. They're the ones who are going to give you instruction on how to eat. But I'm just saying you will be healthier. Your gut will be healthier. You will feel better if you get some sunshine and get your nutrients from your whole foods. All right, gang. Hope you enjoyed that. I will be with you next time. So long.